This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Friday night's edition of Center Stage. I'm Carrie Hines, your host. Get ready, get ready, get ready. It's about to go down. The poet is in the building. So I will pause here and tell you to get on the phone and call a friend, a neighbor, a church member, and definitely a family member and tell them Center Stage is on the air and about to discuss the topic, how they prevented the rise of a black messiah. This will be a history lesson like no other. Brother Ron Hurd recites black history like butter on hot toast. I mean, it's like so smooth, y'all. He is going to show how throughout history they have prevented the rise of a black messiah. It's not by accident, but rather by design. So again, tonight's topic is how they prevented the rise of a black messiah. Our guest is Brother Ron M.B.A. Hurd. He's an entrepreneur, talk show host, artist, producer, videographer, and black history historian. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be amazed, as I was when I first listened to Brother Ron Hurd. I also call him friend, y'all. And I was so amazed the first conversation we had, and he was reciting black history. It made me want to go pick up a book. I mean, because he's just so good at it, but this is just a gift of his. And so tonight, I will be so glad to share that with y'all. Listen, it's going to be something like you've never heard before. But before we introduce Mr. Hurd, I see my co-host is on the line. Good evening, Hillary. How are you?
Good evening, Carrie. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Before we begin, anything you want to say about tonight's topic?
Well, you got me really excited about tonight's topic, so I can't wait to hear Ron's recitation.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, y'all, like I said, the music, get ready. Like TD Jakes says, get ready. It's about to go down. Brother Hurd is on the phone line, so let me open him up. Good evening, Ron. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Sister Carrie and Sister Hillary. How y'all doing? I'm doing fine. It's an honor to be on.
How are you?
You know, when we put together tonight's topic, we were trying to figure out what part of black history we were going to get him to attack this week, and we came up with the fact that you said so many black revolutionaries had been killed. So can you elaborate on how we came up with tonight's topic and why we chose the title, "The Rise of How to Prevent the Rise of a Black Messiah"?
Oh, yeah, Sister Carrie, I was happy to be doing that, to tell about the backstory on that. We actually had a conversation about, I guess like you said, about why so many black revolutionaries were killed. And people may or may not know about the fact that J. Edgar Hoover, he issued a memo to FBI agents and offices around the country about the possibility of a black messiah who could rise and unite the black masses. Like he lists several people as being potential black messiahs. Like he said that Elijah Muhammad of Nation of Islam could be a black messiah, but he's too old. Then he mentioned Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. Then I think he mentioned Malcolm X, but Malcolm was dead by that time. And then he mentioned Dr. King. And we all know about the COINTELPRO situation with the FBI, where they actually violated the civil and human rights of citizens of this country, in particular black people. So there's no secret about what this government has done to undermine a successful black social justice movement. And like somebody said once, it's always an inside job. It's never this outside agitator or some outside enemy. It's always the enemy within. If you really think about it, you go back to the days of Caesar. Who killed Caesar in the Senate? His own fellow, Romans. You think about, Jesus. Who killed Jesus? Somebody said recently that he was a black man killed by law enforcement. It sounds familiar, right? So many brothers and sisters getting killed by law enforcement. But you start thinking about a lot of things. Like, for example, we train our terrorists. You think about the Civil War. Where did General Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, all them go to school? Who trained them? They went to West Point and places like that. They were trained by their own government to turn against their government. You know, Robert E. Lee was the commanding officer at Harper's Ferry when John Brown raided Harper's Ferry back on October 16th, 1859. He was the commanding officer for the U.S. government. But also you think about the guy who planned Pearl Harbor, right? Emo Yamamoto. He went to Harvard Law School, not Harvard Law School, but Harvard University. And we actually taught him how to fly airplanes. This is a guy who was the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack that got us into World War II. But getting back into, like, you know, why we got behind the Black Messiah thing, if you think about it, our enemy, whatever the enemy may be, knows us better than we do. You know, our enemy have studied us for years. We live in the vicinity of our enemy for generations. They know us better than we do. And a lot of us don't really know our potential because we lack knowledge ourselves. So we're not getting that from the miseducation system. So if you look at what happened in the 60s and the 50s, you had this rise of a very educated, very motivated, very well-organized people coming out, not only the colleges, but also the neighborhoods, because you still had strong institutions within the black community that could produce certain type of people. And, you know, at the same time, the government was going at it with the Soviet Union. So you had the Cold War going on. And, you know, the thing about it was the United States said we got the moral superiority over the Soviet Union. So if you start looking at how they were treating black people, like, you know, you got the TV and stuff showing Birmingham and showing Little Rock and how black folks were treated as second-class citizens. This was a black eye for America. And so they have these very articulate people come along who was the have-nots to articulate the frustrations and anger of 22 million Americans who were left outside, you know, on the front door looking for hope, looking for justice, looking for equality. That was a bad look for America at that time. So they had to push back with the COINTEL program, the counterintelligence program. But, you know, go ahead, I'm sorry.
You're assuming that everybody understands what COINTELPRO is. Can you explain and just elaborate just a little bit about how manipulative that program was and how deceptive it is?
Yeah, definitely. You know, COINTELPRO is like counterintelligence program. It was created by the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. It was meant to disrupt any type of movement that went against the ideals and the culture standards of America. You know, which was like at that time Plessy v. Ferguson. Separate but equal, but really wasn't in practice. You know, more like a separate but equal in theory, but not in practice. And also Jim Crow. It was to keep black folks out the system, having any type of equality. So they created a counterintelligence program to disrupt any type of organization or individual that could possibly overturn the American system of white supremacy or racism. So that's basically what it is. Like, you know, you think about the people that infiltrated the Black Panther Party or even the Nation of Islam, people like that from law enforcement, whether it be the FBI or the CIA or the local police department. They will come in, disrupt, and cause confusion among the leadership of these organizations. They will actually become leadership in some cases of the organization. They will try to instigate violent reactions among the individuals or members of the organization to give a bad perception of the organization or individual in the public eye. So this is a very sophisticated program that was initiated by our American government to disrupt any hope that black people can have at getting a chance to sit at the table as equals and to have justice.
So in essence, you know, sending in provocateurs to try to disrupt the movement.
Exactly, yes. People that look like you and I, okay. You know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so if that meant to lie on someone or intentionally misrepresents, you know, a situation or occurrence, they did whatever it took to, you know, create division.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
amongst the group.
Yeah, because white power is based, you know, our system is white power. This is white supremacy, racism. White power, they gain power through divide and conquer. Black power is based on unity and solidarity. Like, when we come together, that's when we are most powerful. So the best way to keep people not coming together is keep them divided and conquering and keep them at each other's throats.
You know, a lot of people today assume, I'm sorry.
No, listen, go ahead.
A lot of people today assume COINTELPRO is over. In actuality, it's not. They think that's an old program. It's really not, is it? It still exists today.
It most definitely exists today. If you look at a lot of this information in our so-called mainstream media, if you look at the parent companies of these media organizations, like, for example, if you look at NBC, their parent company is General Electric. If you look at CBS, their parent company is Westinghouse. Both of these organizations are military contractors. They got big contracts with the Pentagon. So when we look at information about wars and rumors of wars, they be feeding a lot of misinformation because wars are a way to make a big killing in terms of profit. They fight wars to make money and to make profits, not for democracy or for freedom or for justice. Wars are fought to make money. And so the best way to get wars started is to control the information about, how people perceive these things. If you look at you look at a lot of Hollywood movies. If you look at the consultants on these Hollywood movies, a lot of them are from the Pentagon or they're from the CIA. So you see a lot of truth in our movies and whatnot, and some of this stuff is distorted, but it's like a psyops program. Like, back in the 50s, for example, the FBI was sponsored. They actually created the American art movement. The CIA did, and they would sponsor artists, and they would create organizations to promote American culture through art. And people talking about how, hip hop today is a form of COINTELPRO. This year will mark the 20th anniversary of the assassination or death of Tupac Shakur. And his mom was a Black Panther, Afeni Shakur, right? And he was a rapper. He was very influential. And Tupac, he came from a political background. Even though he couldn't run for office, he wanted to get involved in politics to organize people, create a political party for the people. And he knew about his mom's history, and he wanted to do that. But also, Tupac, since he was in the womb, has been under surveillance by the government. For example, Tupac's mom was a part of the Panther 21. And she was set up by people that infiltrated the Black Panther Party up in New York City for crimes they did not commit or they was planning on committing. They got in trouble. They said they were going to blow up historic landmarks like the Statue of Liberty or the Empire State Building in New York. And the person who set them up was Eugene Roberts. Eugene Roberts was undercover police. He was part of the BOSS program in the NYPD, which was a counterintelligence program. Before he became a Black Panther and infiltrated the Panthers and set up Afeni Shakur and the rest of her comrades, he was one of the chief bodyguards for Malcolm X. So he actually infiltrated the Nation of Islam before he infiltrated the Black Panthers. Not only did he infiltrate the Nation of Islam, he became one of Malcolm X's most trusted bodyguards. He was the guy that was trying to give him life-to-life resuscitation on the stage when he got, assassinated back on February 21st, 1965.
So, wow. So Tupac has a rich history.
Yeah, he has rich history. They know who our enemies know who we are. Like, you look at Dr. King, you can go online. Dr. King's family was spied on by the U.S. government for 3 generations. It started with his maternal grandfather, who was the minister at Ebenezer Church. It was spied on by the U.S. government for 3 generations. So you can imagine Dr. King going to Morehouse at the age of 15 and his classmates being federal agents or spies. And people trying to figure him out and watching him from an early age. It's like with Fred Hampton Sr. in Chicago, or not, Maywood, Illinois. Fred Hampton Sr. got on the radar of the FBI when he was just 14 or 15 years old because of the way he was such a great organizer at 14 and 15. Like, he organized the NAACP Youth Council. He organized the NAACP Youth Council in Maywood, Illinois. About a couple hundred kids, right? And he just 14 or 15 doing it. And you got to remember, he was killed at 21 in his bed, right? But they already knew at 14 or 15 that he was going to be a threat to the system. Because even Dr. King was impressed with Fred Hampton.
About him being killed in his bed. He was killed by what? The FBI and the Chicago Police Department, right?
Right, but it was the FBI that masterminded it. They used the Chicago police as to hit people because Fred Hampton's bodyguard, his chief bodyguard was William O'Neill. He was an FBI informant. He was a snitch. And so he actually gave his handler at the FBI the floor plans to Fred Hampton Sr.'s apartment. And he passed it along to Chicago PD. And the crazy thing about it is, like, they're doing a raid at 4 in the morning, right? And everybody's sleeping. And they killed Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. in his bed while he was sleeping. You know, he was next to his pregnant fiance with his namesake in the womb, who was born December 29th of 1969, Fred Hampton Jr. So, you know, that's how messed up it is, because that was exposed during the Church Committee hearings, the COINTELPRO program. It was a guy named Frank Church. He was a senator from Idaho. And he started having these hearings in Congress about the U.S. government violating the civil liberties and human rights of American citizens. So this is where all this information about what happened to Fred Hampton in Chicago and other people came out back in the 70s. And also some other things. They had hearings on the King assassination and on the JFK assassination. Like I said, it's always an inside job. It's never no outside enemy or agitator. Because, you know, it's like, for example, they say a lot of crimes that are committed against people are about people that they know or know of them. You know, it's like a lot of times the people that commit crimes against you are people that you know or they live in your area. You know, so that's how it works with assassinations.
Right. So why was the Black Panther Party considered such a threat? They weren't, I mean, they weren't that big. Why were they such a threat to the government?
Because it was a threat because they were feeding kids before they went to school.
Ooh.
They started the breakfast program. Okay. They started WIC and all this stuff. They started sickle cell testing. They started free health clinics. They started things that people need. If you read the Black Panther Party, like, you know, people talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and all this stuff. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just use the Black Panthers' 10-point platform. The 10 points they address that they want the needs for the people, like, you know, food, clothing, housing, education. They address those in those 10 points. And that would make them a threat because they was addressing the needs of the people. Because how can I get you to be an organizer or a revolutionary if you starving, if your stomach is rumbling, if you can't concentrate or focus? Now, once I feed you some food, I can feed you some food for thought. You could be more concentrated and focused. And they overstood that. As a matter of fact, that's why Fred Hampton was actually killed, because he initiated a lot of those things that the Black Panthers became known for, like breakfast programs, like giving free political education classes, educating the masses about their rights and whatnot. As a matter of fact, you know, it was Fred Hampton Sr. that came up with the concept of the Rainbow Coalition, not Jesse Jackson. He got that from Fred Hampton Sr. Because he was organizing street gangs in Chicago, not just black street gangs, but the white ones, the Puerto Ricans, the Young Lords, the Weathermen, the students of the Democratic Society. He was organizing all these people. He called them tribes. But also he called them the Rainbow Coalition. And so he was able to create gang truces in Chicago. And he was doing this just at the age of 21 and 20 and 19. So imagine if he lived to be even in his 30s. Because I don't know if you noticed that a lot of our black leadership, black male leadership, they tend to get killed in their 30s. If you even think about Jesus, what age was Jesus when he was killed?
30.
Okay, there you go. You got Steve Biko. He was like 31. You got Patrice Lumumba over in the Congo. He was in his 30s. You had Thomas Sankara over in the Aztec. They killed him in his 30s. You had Malcolm X, Dr. King, they both died at 39. You had Medgar Evers, he was killed at 37. So, you know, it's like, you know, imagine that Fred Hampton was already doing so. Dr. King at 21 was not what Fred Hampton was at 21. You understand? Like, Dr. King didn't get involved into the movement until like he was like 25 or 26 years old. And it really was because of his wife, Coretta Scott King, and her progressive thinking that influenced him to get involved in the Montgomery bus boycott and into the movement anyway. But Fred Hampton at 21 was already at an advanced level. So imagine if he lived to be even in his 30s. Imagine if he only lived to be 39. The stuff he could have done. So they had to get rid of him.
Exactly. And you felt like several Black Panther members were potential leaders and were killed. Who were the others?
Well, like Princess Bunchy Carter out in L.A., Los Angeles. He was a member of the Slauson gang. He was very charismatic. He was a talented poet. And he was a leader. You know, matter of fact, I mean, he was killed on UCLA campus along with his comrade, John Huggins, back in, I want to say, January of 1969. See, 1969 was a very bloody year for the Panthers, because January started out with killing our Princess Bunchy Carter and John Huggins at UCLA campus by the US organization. That's the guy who allegedly created Kwanzaa. That's his organization, Karinga. And that's another story about Karinga that I'm going to talk about as well tonight. And also, it ended the year off bloody for the Panthers with the killing of Fred Hampton Sr. on December 4th, 1969. So 1969 was a very bloody year for the Panther Party. They basically decimated the Panther Party leadership. Because you also had Huey Newton facing gas chamber charges for allegedly killing that officer. But he was in jail still. So the Panther Party leadership was like, no, all in disarray.
Well, that was enough to dismantle it, pretty much.
Basically, I mean, you cut the head off, it's pretty much a done deal. The body can't function without the head. It's like with Fred Hampton, he was politicizing and radicalizing like people like Jeff Fort, who led the Stone Rangers, the Black Stone Rangers, right? Which became the L. Ruckins. Jeff Fort was one of the most charismatic gang leaders in Chicago, but he couldn't read. He was functionally illiterate. But he had somebody like Fred Hampton that was politicizing Jeff Fort. And so that was a threat. So what the FBI did, they caused a division between Jeff Fort and Fred Hampton Sr. Like the FBI actually created a coloring book, and they sent it to like white households. And it was about the Black Panthers. And basically it was a fear coloring book because they showed the Black Panthers being against white people and killing police and calling police pigs and all this stuff. It was a horrible misrepresentation of the Black Panther Party. Because truth be told, their biggest sponsorship, the Black Panthers, were from white people, like Jane Fonda, like Marlon Brando, like Leonard Bernstein. It was white people with money that actually financed the Black Panther Party. A lot of money came from white people.
So there was also another member of the Black Panther Party that you considered a leader that they had killed, and that was who else?
Well, you know, like, or they had set up Geronimo Pratt. I mean, a little bit noise, I guess like a bag or something. Okay.
Is that your phone?
Oh, might have been my phone.
Okay. Well, I mentioned Geronimo Pratt to you in conversation. Geronimo Pratt was a decorated Vietnam War veteran, and he was a member of the Black Panther Party in the L.A. chapter. And what's interesting about Geronimo Pratt was that he was set up by the government for a murder he did not commit. Mm. And the reason, the sad thing about that is the fact that they claimed that he killed this school teacher at a tennis court, this white lady at a tennis court, but he was like hundreds of miles away. He actually was at a meeting with the Black Panther leadership. And the reason why we know that is because the government had him under surveillance. They had photos and everything of him at this meeting. But when the trial came up, they withheld evidence from the jury. So he was in jail for 27 years for something he didn't do. And Johnny Cochran was he was one that was advocating for Geronimo Pratt. He finally was released back in 1997, and I believe he died back in 2010 or 2011 in Tanzania in Africa. But he was Tupac's godfather. Yeah, you think about that. I mentioned Tupac, right? He was Tupac's godfather. Then you got Ashada Shakur in Cuba. She's exiled. That's Tupac's aunt. Then his stepfather was just released from jail, Mutulu Shakur, who helped Ashada Shakur escape the country. So who was Tupac? And I mentioned that Fred Hampton was already ahead of the game at 21. He was way ahead of Malcolm and Dr. King at the age of 21. So they had to get rid of him. But then you bring Tupac, who at the age of 25 had way more influence than Fred Hampton on anybody else at that age, right? He was the biggest hip-hop star in the world. And they killed him. But he was under surveillance by the FBI, too, just like Bad Boy was. I mean, you had FBI at the site where Biggie got killed. They were taking pictures. So the FBI was, think about this, during the civil rights movement. All these civil rights murder cases were able to be solved in such a fast way was because of the fact that the FBI was in the Klan. They infiltrated the Klan, or the Klan infiltrated the FBI. I don't know how you say it. But they was involved in killing civil rights workers. The FBI was. You had FBI people in the car that killed the white lady from Detroit Raul Liuzzo, who was taking folks home from the Sandals campaign. He got killed in a drive-by. It was FBI in the car. Even you look at Swan and Cheney and Goodman, you had FBI in the Klan in Mississippi. And it was funny because you had FBI prison when the civil rights workers getting beaten up by the Klan and by other white people. And the FBI would just be on the side looking at people getting beat up. And this is famous activist named Bob Zellner. He's a white guy who was a part of SNCC. He came from Alabama. He's from Alabama. Some of his relatives were in the Klan, but he ended up becoming a civil rights activist. So he was one of the white activists of SNCC. And he talked about being beat up so bad in front of the FBI, they were watching him get beat up by a white mob. So they say he was a nigger level, right? They actually went into his eye socket and stretched his eyeballs out. They stretched it from the socket. It didn't break. He just said, I didn't know my eyeballs can stretch like that. But he can see he's good and stuff like that now. So I'm saying the FBI was looking at all of this, and they didn't intervene. They didn't stop or anything.
So when people think of the FBI as a law enforcement agency that is going to protect us, not necessarily the case.
Never was the case. Never was the case. Because the FBI was founded on destroying black power. The reason why the FBI became the FBI because they took down Marcus Garvey. It had nothing to do with John Dillinger or Bonnie and Clyde and Pretty Boy Floyd. This is stuff that white folks want to tell you. But the reason why the FBI got what it got and became what it became is because they blood sacrificed Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was the biggest threat to white supremacy in America. Marcus Messiah Garvey from Jamaica. And the reason why he was the biggest threat because he had the ability to unite black people, regardless of social class and whatever. He had that ability. He was the greatest mass leader we ever produced, that we ever seen, period. Because you got to think about it. He didn't have no radio show back then. He didn't have no TV. He didn't have no social media. He had millions of black folks dying through his vision for black power and black liberation, not just in America, but around the world. And you got to understand this, too. Marcus Garvey never went to Africa. He never visited Africa. But yeah, he overstood the power of black folks throughout the world having a relationship with the motherland. So they had to get rid of Marcus Garvey. Jacob Hoover. Go ahead.
They titled him the leader of Pan-Africanists, didn't they?
Yeah, he was the leader of the Pan-African movement. I mean, you had a lot of Pan-Africanists. It's been around since the 19th century, Pan-Africanism. Yeah, people like Martin Delaney, people in America that was doing that type of stuff way before there was a Marcus Garvey. But Marcus Garvey was the Michael Jordan of the Pan-Africanism. And not in terms of his politics, but Michael Jordan is nowhere near Marcus Garvey in politics, but in terms of his execution, in terms of him taking the game to the next level, he was the biggest threat. Because like Marcus Garvey also had the African Legion, which was basically a standing army. It's kind of like when people said, well, Gandhi said that the civil disobedience didn't work. They had a backup plan. Well, Marcus Garvey's backup plan was the African Legion. And because we don't really control our narrative, we don't know the history of the African Legion like we should. Because that's where the fruit of Islam come out of, the African Legion. Or even if you think about this, Marcus Garvey was so powerful and profound that you had somebody like Ho Chi Minh, who was the leader of the Northern Vietnamese resistance during the Vietnam War. He used to come from Vietnam to America, to Harlem, just to listen to Marcus Garvey speak. That's Ho Chi Minh, who led the Vietnam War for the Northern Vietnamese. He used to come all the way from Vietnam to Harlem just to listen to Marcus Garvey speak. And this has been documented. That's how impressed he was with Marcus Garvey. And the white power structure was very impressed with Marcus Garvey. That's why the Klan was more than willing to give Marcus Garvey money for his movement. He took money from the Klan. But, politics made for strange bedfellows because Nation of Islam also dealt with the Klan. They brought real estate from the Klan in Georgia. They also had people like George Lincoln Rockwell, who was the founder of the American Nazi Party. He spoke at several Savior Days with the blessing of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
And Garvey wasn't even from here. He was Jamaican, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was Jamaican, but his hero was Booker T. Washington. That was his mentor. He used to write to Booker T. Washington to try to start what Booker T. Washington started because he wanted to start something similar in Jamaica. And his plan was to come to America and meet with Booker T. Washington, and even probably work with Booker T. Washington down in Tuskegee. But, Booker T. Washington died in 1915. We're going to talk about Booker T. Washington, too. And he ended up coming here, and he ended up staying here. And his first speaking engagement, his first major speaking engagement, was given to him by A.L.L, the great labor leader. But here's the thing. The FBI could not bring down Marcus Garvey without black leadership help over here. See, that's the thing. It's always an inside job. They could not even touch Marcus Garvey without the black leadership class helping the government and getting rid of Marcus Garvey. He was set up.
And so Garvey was ultimately killed how?
He died he died in London back in 1940. He had a stroke or a heart attack, something like that. He actually found his obituary in the Chicago Defender while he was still alive. He was like just reading the newspaper, and I think it caused him to have a stroke. And then he had like another stroke or something like that and passed away in 1940. But Dr. King, back in the 60s, he visited Jamaica and laid a wreath at Marcus Garvey's tomb. If you don't understand, Dr. King of the last 4 years wasn't the same Dr. King from the 1950s or the early 60s. He was a different man. And he was influenced by Marcus Garvey and Elijah Muhammad, when he was doing the housing thing. This year marks the 50th anniversary of the housing movement that Dr. King led up in Chicago. That was the movement where he had the brick hit his head. He said that Chicago was worse than the South when it came to racial injustice. Like he feared for his life more in Chicago than he did in Philadelphia, Mississippi. That's saying something, right? So he also met with Elijah Muhammad while he was there back in 1966. So yeah, but Marcus Garvey is basically, mail fraud. They got him on mail fraud. But the FBI actually hired their first agent. Their first FBI agent was this guy. You can Google him up, Agent 800. That was his code name, and he was a DC detective.
What? I'm sorry, it sounded like
800, Agent 800.
Okay.
And he was a DC detective at one point and a decorated World War I veteran. But he was hired by Hoover and the FBI to infiltrate the Garvey movement. As a matter of fact, he got real close to Marcus Garvey. And he suggested that Marcus Garvey was very depressed and wanted to kill himself on several occasions. How close he was. Because Marcus Garvey confided a lot into these Agent 800. And I think Agent 800 was actually making golf for the movement. I think he was helping with manufacturing of black for black children, if I'm not mistaken. So you can look at all that stuff online. But he was the first FBI agent of color hired. And his job was to infiltrate the Garvey movement and to neutralize Marcus Garvey. Or discredit Marcus Garvey, whatever it took.
And you would think it would be criminal for, law enforcement to infiltrate a group and cause division and could potentially, that could potentially end up in someone getting killed, but no one ever called them to the rug on that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? When you're causing divisions between gangs and groups, you could have potentially gotten someone killed, and no one ever found anything wrong with that. I see a lot wrong with that.
Well, you just look at Chicago gangs. Yeah, it is a lot wrong. It's entrapment. It's the only way they catch somebody breaking the crime. They got to break the crime first. The government got to do wrong for you to do wrong. So that's entrapment. So that's not really. I agree with you on that. And you think about Chicago. Chicago has always been a testing ground for guns and for weaponry and for different things. If you go back to the 1920s, when it was the white boys doing the drive-bys and whatnot in Chicago, the Thompson submachine gun was first used in Chicago because World War I ended too quickly for it to be used in the war. So the first Thompson submachine guns, they were first used in Chicago. They called it the Chicago typewriter. And there's been stories of when Jeff Ford and them was running the streets of Chicago that they were actually held trains to deliver stuff. They said to Carbondale, Illinois. They dropped out huge boxes full of high-grade weapons for them to use in Chicago. So the government would actually drop weapons where the gangs could get them, and so they could use them in warfare. And they study how they perform in street combat. That's the way they test a lot of new weapons. The government did by dumping them into these neighborhoods where these gangs were at, and letting them use the weapons. Just like with the drugs.
I think they're still doing that in Chicago today.
Yeah, they're doing that in Chicago today, but they also do it with drugs. You think about, Hillary Clinton running for office now, and nobody really talks about Mena, Arkansas. when her husband was governor. Mena, Arkansas had an airport back in the 80s where the CIA would get drugs from South America. They would deliver drugs to Mena, Arkansas to distribute throughout the country. I'm like cocaine and stuff like that. And it was a pilot for the CIA named Barry Seal. HBO did a movie about his life starring Dennis Hopper some years ago. Barry Seal was a CIA pilot, and he blew the whistle on what they was doing. You know, he confessed that he was involved with the government and, bringing drugs to America to be distributed throughout the country into these inner cities. He ended up getting killed in a drug-related hit down in, I think, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, outside of a laundromat back in the late 80s. So you can look him up, but Mena, Arkansas was a place where they used to distribute drugs. And the only reason we know about Mena, Arkansas, because it was two young white boys who was found murdered on some train tracks near the airport. And the white families of these boys would not let it go. They did not believe the quote-unquote official story, so they started digging deeper, and it blew the whole lid off the case. So people should look at the Clinton Chronicles. It's online on YouTube. They type in the Clinton Chronicles. They talk about Mena, Arkansas.
It's so much to history. I mean, you know what? We're shortchanging ourselves, y'all, by just living in the present and not going back and looking at, what all we've missed.
Right.
Because when you come up to speed with, where we've been, it kind of gives you an indicator where we're going. Don't you agree with that?
I never agree. I mean, it's like the season. Go ahead, Paul.
I was saying, I agree. They say those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And you see that they use these same tactics over and over and over again. So it's vitally important that we study it so we can recognize it when it's happening, and also be prepared because they update and upgrade their technologies. So even though it's the same basic, principle, they've upgraded how they deliver it to us.
That is true.
Hey. The thing I'm seeing is the best indicator of future behavior, as Dr. Phil would always say, is past behavior.
That's right.
Yep.
Just putting it out there, y'all. And that's just really what it is because, it seems like with each of these leaders, they use the exact same MO.
Right.
We just didn't, for whatever reason, realize that you have to check not just your outer circle, but your inner circle really close, too. Because it's like Ron said at the beginning, every time they got them from somebody within.
That's right. Mm-hmm. It never changes. That part never changes. It's always an inside job. It's what you got to say. Like Wall Street, it's always an inside job when Wall Street collapses. It's never an outside job. It's always their own doing. Think about how many people try to report Bernie Madoff. And nobody took him seriously because guess what? Because Bernie Madoff was one chairman of the SEC. So he had buddies everywhere. Because, y'all know who the first chairman of the SEC was, right?
No. The first who?
The first chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, the people that regulate Wall Street. You know who was the first one?
Don't say Bernie Madoff.
No, it was before Bernie Madoff. But,
no. Who?
Papa Joe. You said Papa Joe?
Who was it?
Kennedy?
Yeah, it was Kennedy. Yeah, Joe Kennedy, yeah. He was the first. Yeah, he was the first chairman of the SEC. And, when he was appointed the first chairman of the SEC.
But he was a criminal.
Right. Well, they told Franklin Roosevelt. That's exactly what they told the president. He's a criminal. And Franklin Roosevelt said, it takes a crook to catch a crook. It takes a crook to catch a crook. So it takes a criminal to catch a criminal. That was J. Hoover was. He was criminal. He was a psychopath. He was powerful.
Yeah, he was.
He definitely was psychopathic.
Yeah. So he was obsessed with Dr. King. Go ahead.
He what?
He was very obsessed with Dr. King.
I never saw any good he did while he was there. He just really created, he went out, it's like creating fires and then going putting them out. That seems like what he was doing.
It's like a insurance scam, right? You set up good on. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that seems like what he was doing. He was going and creating these chaotic situations and then saying, okay, the FBI fixed it. But in reality, the FBI, under J. Edgar Hoover's watch, was creating these situations.
And they still creating a situation.
Well, you see it now where the police create situations where they need to ultimately kill people. So they create the problem so that they can be there to, quote-unquote, fix it.
Exactly. Why fix it right? You know, like, think about it. They can make a car that can last for 50 years. They can make a car that can run on water, but why do it?
Yeah.
You won't make any money.
Yeah. Well, that goes the same with medication. You know, they rather give you, they rather, address the situation rather than fix the situation. So they just keep medicating the situation rather than fixing the situation. Because you know what? The money is in the problem, not fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's a shock doctrine. Yeah.
Wow. So we see throughout history the same MO over and over again is to, say that everything black is bad. And so then when we say it's bad, that means we say it enough times that you believe it. So then after we make you believe that it's bad, then we go and we exterminate it and we make you feel like we fixed the problem that we created.
I mean, Malcolm said it best. Go ahead, sir.
Go on.
I was saying, Malcolm said about the media. No, go ahead. Information.
I was saying information is the key to getting people to believe information is just repetition, not quality of, not the quality of the information, just the quantity of it. So you see, because they control all the media and our education. Like when I was in school, we learned all kind of bad things about Marcus Garvey. Everything, not that we learned much, but what it was bad. He was a crook and all this other stuff. And you have to learn on your own that was not the case. And they did the same thing about Malcolm X, Panthers, all kind of people. And the only person they really don't demonize is Martin Luther King. But they don't even teach you all the information about Dr. King.
Exactly.
They have you thinking he just had a dream, but he was, much more prolific than that in his thoughts and ideas, especially towards the end when they killed him.
Right, and that's the thing that people need to study. I think it's very important because Malcolm said it about the media so many years ago, how it's like the most powerful force on earth because it controls the minds of the masses. It creates your perception. It can make your friend your enemy and your enemy your friend. And that's why you look at a lot of our greatest leaders, they were very much involved in the dissemination of information, whether it be Dr. Carter G. Woodson, with his association of Negro life and history, now known as ASALA, whether it be Marcus Garvey with his Negro World, whether it be Malcolm X coming up with Muhammad Speaks, whether it be Ida B. Wells Barnett coming up with the Free Speech and Headlight paper, talking about lynching, whether it be anybody, Frederick Douglass with the North Star, the African Freedom Journal from the 1820s, David Walker's Appeal, they understood the value of controlling the narrative by controlling our media. It's like with John H. Johnson, he was the person that put the picture of Emmett Till's destroyed face or mutilated face in the media. It wasn't the New York Times. It was Jet Magazine. It was Negro Digest, right? So it's on us to tell these stories, to keep these narratives going. And because with Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X, he were very honest men. And Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey are interesting because they were surrounded by a lot of dishonest people and not honorable people. Because really Marcus Garvey, his downfall was trusting the wrong people with his business situation. And you had folks that was very envious of Marcus Garvey, like Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who could have helped Marcus Garvey, but they refused not to help. Not only did they not refuse not to help him, but they also set him up by the government. They used people like Dr. Du Bois and A. Philip Randolph and other people in the black leadership to set up Marcus Garvey. And then years later... Did Du Bois contact the FBI? He probably did. I mean, he was used to set him up.
He approached them. They didn't even approach him because he was so jealous of Marcus Garvey.
It could be possible, but I'm just saying, like, years later, he was in China for his 90th birthday celebration. This is back in 1959. And he said it best. He said, I'm paraphrasing Dr. Du Bois. He said, I did all these things for my country because Dr. Du Bois is the father of American sociology. A lot of people don't really know that. He created the sociology genre in America. And he was probably one of the most brilliant minds we ever had. But he said, I did all this stuff for my country. And now they know me as just another nigga That's what he said in China during his birthday. I'm just known as another nigga. That's why he went to Ghana. And they messed with him at the end. They took his passport. You know, they was like, cause NACP is interesting. The history of the NACP. If you look at the Spingarn guy, Joe Spingarn, you know, their highest honor is when they give somebody the Spingarn medal, right? But he was U.S. Army intelligence. He was a spy. He was using the NACP to spy on black people.
We got to do better. I mean, we got to do better. I mean, y'all, are you? One of the reasons that I chose to do the show, we really don't do a whole month of Black History simply because we talk about Black History all year long. So we don't feel like we need anybody to tell us what month in which to do it. Mm-hmm. But one reason that I chose this topic is because somebody's got some noise on their phone. One reason I chose this topic is because we got to stop doing that to each other. We got to stop the crab mentality. We got to stop tearing each other down. We got to stop being the reason that the movement didn't happen because another black person stopped the movement. We got to do better. I mean, because we're getting ready to face the worst, time in history. And if we don't realize, that if Donald Trump gets in office, things are going to change real quick for us. And so we really got to think about there is going to have to be another movement. And we got to be careful that someone within the movement does not tear down the next one. And so that's why we chose to talk about, how they prevented the rise of a black messiah tonight, because we wanted people to realize in history it's the same MO over and over again. The reason, our leaders, the ones that chose to put their lives on the line for the movement, have died because someone within the movement chose to sell them out. So that's what we're talking about, Marcus Garvey and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael and Fred Hampton and, Medgar Evers, Booker T. Washington, Tupac, and so many others, just because tonight we really want to put emphasis there that we need another movement and we need one quickly. And we got to organize for the 2016 election. And that's saying we need to have a trust amongst us that we are going to have sellouts to sell us out. Y'all, that's what we're talking about tonight, y'all, how they prevented the rise of a black messiah. If you have a question or a comment tonight, get on the phone lines at 347-850-8390. Brother Ron Hurd is in the building. I call him the poet of black history because he just recites it like nobody else. It's just in there, y'all. His memory is long when it comes to black history. We're going to go to the phone lines. We're going to pick up 862-213. Good evening. You're on Center Stage.
Good evening. It's Hafsua. Good evening. How are you, sis?
Good evening. I'm good.
How are you?
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm listening. It's good to hear the history. It really is. And I thank you for the show tonight. When I saw that, I saw it at the last moment, and I said, let me get in there. I've been in meetings all day, and the killing of the Black Messiah, that was a topic that was right on cue because of I'm sitting in City Hall all day, and I'm looking at the sellouts, our big old coons sitting in offices that are harming us on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
One thing that I did want to talk about, and we're talking about history that's repeating itself over and over again. The one thing that we have to realize is that, white people, okay, that white privilege, that privilege that goes with, they dangle it in our faces every day. And it's like, hey, you little nigga, we're going to do something better for you. Excuse my language. Is it okay if I say things like that?
I'm not going to. Yeah,
I said it, right?
It's on your heart.
It's like they're saying, it's okay if you do the things that we tell you to do because we're going to let you live a little bit better if you turn to that coon and sell out your fellow brothers and sisters, okay? And that is a part of the multi-generational issue that comes with us. That is our legacy. And we have to learn some kind of way, all right? Or we have to balance it out because of that white privilege. And for each white person that says, hey, I'm not a racist, if you are benefiting or if you are utilizing that white privilege, you are a racist. All right? So I always make it very clear. I don't care if you're my friend, my foe, my whatever it is, white, black, orange, green, or yellow.
if you are dealing with somebody who is utilizing white privilege, they are racist. So they accept and give up that privilege. There's not going to be any kind of equality whatsoever. Not that ever exists, because they think that just because we're darker, we're automatically inferior. And I think that there was one that started that, all right, and said that, and the rest of them followed along. Hey, these niggas ain't no good. Let's just use them for whatever we can use them for, all right? These topics get me worked up because of the things that I've endured, what my mom has endured. Sister Carrie knows about all of that. I'm not even going to get into that. That's not even the topic tonight. But we're just talking about, or I'm just talking about, the things that I have experienced because of the sellouts that are in there. Crabs in a barrel. They don't want you to get ahead. Now, as far as the election is concerned, what I say is that for all the people that have their feet to the street on a regular basis, that are involved in the struggle, those are the ones whose names we should see on the ballot. Let's give these old-time Democrats, Republicans, and the rest of those crackers that's in office a run for their money. And I'm calling the black folks in office crackers, too, because they are part of the collusion. If we do not put people in office that are a part of the struggle, we will continue to struggle. Right now, people are saying, I ain't going to vote. I'm not going to vote. I think that's a setup, too. But we're not going to vote because it's not going to make a difference. It will make a difference. It will make a difference if we get out there in mass and do what we need to do. But we've got to see our names on the ballot. And because of that, I'm running for Congress. Because the congressman we have in office right now is no good, a no good sellout, right? So I'm going to do battle with him. I'm going to on street level, all right, with our people. So if I am right now challenging each and every one of you that are speaking on there today, and each and every one that's listening, to put your name on the ballot, run for office, because there's no way that we can harm our people anymore if we stick to what our guts tell us, if we stick to what we know is right, if we stick to what will better our people only. I'm not kidding.
But, I had a different idea for 2016. I'm going to jump in right there. I have a different idea for the presidential election of 2016. I thought black people ought to create a voting block, and I thought we all ought to, come up with one candidate, and we ought to write that candidate in. So I wouldn't say we all ought to just all put our names on there. I think we ought to come up with one good candidate, one good option, and put that person as a write-in on the 2016 presidential ballot box. That's just my opinion. Y'all can, disagree with me, but that's just what I think.
On the presidential level, I agree with you. The presidential level, I agree with you. But any other office that's around here, if we don't remove those 100-year veterans that's been in there, we're going to keep suffering the same problems. And then we move some more in there that go along. They collude. That's one of the biggest crimes ever, the collusion. We got to get rid of these folks. Because they're not going to change. They're not going to change.
And thank you tonight.
Now I'm
what? You made some valid points. We got to do something. Thank you, Fuma. Thank you. 860-212. Good evening. You're on center stage. 860-212.
Hello? Hello?
Yes. Good evening.
I want to say, hey, Ron.
Hey, Brad. How you doing?
Yeah. Miss Carey, just again, I called here and I was put on the queue and I did not press 1. Can you please stop that?
Okay.
And so I pressed 1 to get on the radio.
Okay. We tell you what. From now on, we just go disregard your number because for some reason it just keeps pressing itself. But thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
It's not.
Okay, I don't know why every week it's the same thing with
this
number.
She calls a tech support problem every week.
Yeah.
Every week. His number, they do that just with his number, but okay. So, Brother Ron, back to the subject at hand. We call it the tech support situation. But anyway, back to the situation at hand. We really do have a situation in which black people have been selling out each other and selling out our leaders. What's another good example of our leaders that have, met the same fate?
Oh, well, you think about, I can talk about, she talked about politics. And I think the best politician we ever produced that ever did anything for Black America, and really it's not Obama, is Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And that's a name we don't really talk about that much, but he is the reason why we got affirmative action. He is the reason why we got the National Endowment for the Arts. He is the reason why we got a lot of things done. Like, he was the Michael Jordan of politicians. Like, he was chairman of a committee. He was the actual brains behind Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society program. He came up with a lot of that stuff. Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was interested because he's like Dr. King. He is the son of a famous minister. His father was over at Abyssinian Church in Harlem. And, like Dr. King, he led boycotts and sit-ins and stuff like that. But Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was doing that back in the 30s and 40s. He was doing that way before the 50s. Yeah, he was doing that way before the 50s. And the thing about it, once he got in the office, the things he did, what people don't understand about Black people, when you help Black people, you actually helping everybody else, because we are the original people. We the universal people. When you do for Black, you do for everybody else, because everybody else benefits. Like, even what people are doing today, whether it be gay rights or women's rights or immigrant rights, they're using our struggle and our movement history as the blueprint for their come-uppings. And our thing about it is that we got to get this idea about voting people in and about choosing a party. We got to start doing things like the really smart and successful people in politics do. They don't run for office. They write checks that don't bounce. And they buy their politicians. And they buy their policy.
Yep.
Asian Americans don't vote that much. Asian Americans don't vote. They got businesses. Hispanics, Latino, they don't really vote. They got businesses. They create money. They create revenue. Can you even look at those gangster movies? What do the gangsters do? They pay off the cops. They pay off the politicians. That's how you get ahead in this country. It's not about voting. Black folks vote more than anybody. And we got nothing to show for it. Because we're not organized in terms of lobbying and also getting our resources together. And that's the thing. And also Mickey Leland. A lot of people don't talk about Mickey Leland no more. No more. Mickey Leland was an interesting guy from Houston that took Barbara Jordan's congressional spot. And he was the president of the Black Caucus back in the 80s. But also he was very serious about ending world hunger. He started his own committee and everything in the Congress. Right? He was getting like hundreds of millions of dollars for this committee to help end world hunger. And he was very concerned about Africa, in particular Ethiopia. Now, he died in a plane crash with 15 other people back in August of 89. He was just 44 years old. And we don't even talk about him. I mean, he got clips online, a little bit of him. But this guy was a visionary. He knew Black Lives Matter. He knew the importance of feeding Black lives before he could do anything else. But he was trying to help the whole world, but he started with Africa. And they swore they couldn't find his plane. It was crashing to this mountainside in Ethiopia. It took them several days to find his plane. By that time, everybody was dead on board. So this is what they do. And Adam Clayton Powell Jr., he was replaced by Charlie Rangel. They basically destroyed Adam Clayton Powell Jr.'s career in Congress. And he died on April 4th, 1972 from cancer. That's 4 years after Dr. King. Dr. King died on April 4th, 1968. Adam Clayton Powell Jr. died on April 4th, 1972. And he probably from a cancer that the government gave him because he was too effective at that level. And also, I always tell people too, if you look at Dr. King, it's already been proven that the government killed Dr. King. They proved it on December 8th, 1999 in Memphis when a jury said that the government was complicit in the assassination of Dr. King. That was proven in the court of law. December 8th, 1999. That's history. And the media did not really amplify that story, the mainstream media. And the thing about what people got to understand with Dr. King is that when he would come to Memphis, this is how the simple way I can explain the King assassination to people. Because we don't do a good job of that. Because I be hearing kids ask their parents who killed Dr. King, they keep on talking about hate killed Dr. King or the Klan. No, it was the government. Okay? And the way I can explain this is the fact that when Dr. King used to come to Memphis, he would always have an all-black Memphis police security detail. I talked to two officers who were involved in protecting Dr. King when he came to Memphis. The last time he came to Memphis, he had no such protection because the person who controlled the Memphis police and fire department was a guy named Frank Holloman. Before he was the person over the Memphis police and fire department, he was J. Edgar Hoover's number 3 man for 25 years at the FBI headquarters. The guy who controlled the Memphis police and fire department was J. Edgar Hoover's number 3 man for 25 years. So now you get the big picture. Matter of fact, I had a chance to hear Reverend Albert Sampson. He came to the Civil Rights Museum to speak back in November. Reverend Albert Sampson was Dr. King's SCLC director of housing. He's a well-known and respected minister in Chicago. He's like only one of 3 ministers ever ordained by Dr. King. So he's one of 3. He was a student activist at Shaw University, where SNCC was founded. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was founded at Shaw University back in 1960. So he was at Shaw University, and also I think he went down to learn. I don't know if he went to Morehouse too. But he said, and I got this online on my YouTube channel, he said that Dr. King, back in August of 1966, he called a meeting of his top SCLC lieutenants. At this meeting, he told them that he was told by a black FBI agent from California that the government was going to assassinate him. So Dr. King knew he was a dead man walking in 1966. Hello?
And doesn't Judge Joe Brown have a connection to Dr. King's case?
Yeah, he testified in the case, but also he was over the case. He tried the gun that they said was James Earl Ray gun that's now in the Civil Rights Museum. He proved that it wasn't the gun. And that's why he got that TV show. Because they thought Judge Joe Brown was going to be like like the sister said, a coon or a sellout. But Judge Joe Brown is a highly intelligent and a brilliant legal mind and also a scientist. Because his major at first was physics in school. He went to UCLA. And so he tested the gun himself. And he said this was not the gun that was used on April 4th, 1968. So they got rid of him from that case. But he testified in that court case that led to the guilty verdict against the government back in 1999.
Wow.
And all this stuff could be found online. At first, I couldn't find the court transcripts when they was building the MLK Memorial in D.C. They used to have it on the King Center website, but during that time, it was nowhere to be found. But I finally found it, and I would suggest to anybody, please find these transcripts and download them or keep them in a safe place. They might disappear again. And also a book that is good to read about the King assassination is called An Act of State by Dr. William Pepper. He was James Earl Ray's lawyer, but also he was a friend. He was a friend of the King family. He knew Dr. King personally. He ended up being James Earl Ray's lawyer later on. He wrote a book called An Act of State that talks about the assassination and about the verdict.
So Judge Joe Brown is confident that gun that they said killed Dr. King did not kill Dr. King.
Yeah, and also he's confident that it wasn't James Earl Ray. You got to think about it. I want people to put their critical thinking caps on. James Earl Ray escaped from a federal penitentiary in Missouri. I call it misery. He was on the run for almost 3 years, right? He was on the run for almost 3 years, and they caught him in Heathrow Airport in London. And they say he acted alone. How the hell is an escaped inmate from a federal penitentiary going to be on the run for 3 years and end up in a foreign country? And he acted alone.
That's good right there. That's rich history, y'all. So first of all, somebody who's on the run, why would they want to get caught up in something like that?
Exactly. But he talked about a guy named Raul.
Look for trouble.
Yes. But you talk about that Raul character, right? And there's a Raul character in the Kennedy assassination. There's a couple things. You look at a lot of these things, they got the same MO, and also sometimes they have the same characters involved in all these assassination plots. But people don't really know the history because it can be frustrating because the truth is staring you in the face, but you don't see it for what it is. Because we got all this information online. We have Steve Coakley. We have Brother Baba Dick Gregory. We have the information. We have the transcripts. We have the interviews. And yet folks seem like they don't know what the hell going on. And like with Malcolm X, let me make it simple for people with Malcolm X, okay? The person who was responsible for the correspondence between Brother Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad was John Ali. He was the secretary of the Nation of Islam. He was one of the most powerful leaders in the Nation of Islam at that time. And also he was undercover FBI. He was the FBI. So you had the number 3 or top man, one of the top people in the Nation of Islam, one of Elijah Muhammad's confidants. He was an FBI agent. And he's still alive. His name is John Ali. And then you had Malcolm X's chief bodyguard was undercover NYPD, Eugene Roberts, who later became a founding member of the NYC Panther Party chapter, and ended up setting up Tupac's mom and the Panther 21.
Rich history. Rich history. If y'all just tuned in, you've come to the stage tonight, y'all, and y'all listening to the voice of none other than Brother Ron Hurd. I call him the poet of history. And he's breaking down the topic, how they prevented the rise of a black messiah. If you have not heard some of this before, trust me, do the research, and you can trust and believe that everything he says can be backed up somewhere online. That information exists. Is that not right, Ron?
That's right. Because nobody trusts black folks. Nobody trusts a black man when they talk. Nobody trusts a black man. Not even a black man. We won't trust each other. We trust white folks because they sound a certain way. They've been taught, to sound a certain way, and to look a certain way. Even though their history tells us otherwise, we trust white people when we trust ourselves. Mm-hmm. And Malcolm overstood that. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But they can find a book or somewhere online the information that you are providing will be there.
Yeah, it will be there. Like I said, read An Act of State by a white guy named Dr. William Pepper, who was James Earl Ray's lawyer and also a confidant of the King family. Read An Act of State. Also you read things on Brother Malcolm. Because Malcolm X, our problem with Malcolm X is this. We still afraid of Malcolm X as a people. We still afraid of him. We think he's the boogeyman. He's been dead for 51 years. But here's the thing about Brother Malcolm that we got to understand or overstand. We must study the last year of his life. That's why he got killed. Not because of the Nation of Islam. He got killed because the last year of his life. The last year of his life was phenomenal.
What happened in the last year of his life that was so crucial?
Well, basically what he was doing was he was getting ready to bring the United States of America up on charges of human rights violations against 22 million African Americans before the United Nations. And he actually had the backing of African countries. He was getting people together. Oh, they was afraid. Because first it was just talk. Then once he got started, and he started traveling around the world, in particular the African diaspora, then he started having representatives from Africa states quoting him on the floor of the UN. And then they said, you talk about the Congo, but what about Mississippi? And then you got the Cold War going on. This is bad for business because the United States won't be looked at as democracy, the land of freedom, the land of equality. But if you got black heads of state or African heads of state saying you can't talk about Africa because you won't deal with the problems in Mississippi or Alabama, then you got a problem. Then the fact that Malcolm X inspired them so much that they passed a militant resolution during the Organization of African Unity meeting one time. This is like he was able to sit in as a visitor. This was a first. They normally would not let anybody that was not, a part of that African Union sit in on their organizational meeting. But the fact that Malcolm X was so revered, because he was the only leader from that era that had an international plan. He was the only one that understood. He understood that this is not a civil rights issue. This is a human rights issue. And that's why he elevated, because he was trying to internationalize the American struggle of the black American and connect it with the motherland. Because what people don't understand is this. Back in the day, when Chinese immigrants or any type of immigrant from a different country, when they came to America, and if they were lynched or hanged by Americans, the United States government had to acknowledge what happened, and not only acknowledge what happened, but pay reparations to that immigrant's native country. See, this is the problem with black people right now. We have nowhere where we get justice at. Like when we get killed by the police, there is no nation that we can go to or country that will back our needs and represent us. It's like when that Indian guy in Alabama, when he came to visit his son and his newborn grandchild, when he was walking around the neighborhood in Alabama, I think outside of Birmingham, and the cops body slammed him and attacked him. And the only reason we got any type of justice for him or any type of attention was because he was an Indian citizen. So the Indian government contacted our government, and the state of Alabama and the city, they fired that cop with the quickness. They didn't give him no suspended pay a suspended leave with pay. They fired his ass on the same day because you had a government.
I think he got his job back.
Well, it's possible.
Yeah, I think the officer got his job back.
He might have got.
His job back.
If he got his job back, but the thing about, well, the thing, he might have got it. I don't know about it.
He didn't take immediate action, but
right,
and like he was okay.
Well, it's white supremacy you're dealing with. Like the fact that people keep their eye off the ball. We don't keep our eye on the prize. It's our problem. We get happy when we celebrate a battle. We won a battle, but we still haven't won a war. We win battles here and there. But the thing about it is we don't know their history, though. Well, I'm telling you, the United States did pay reparations to countries who lost citizens over here due to racial violence or whatever. So, there is a track record of that happening. But that's the problem with black people. The reason why we can't unify, also because we don't know our mother tongue. We don't know our native language. Because they took away our drums. Because the only place during slavery, and we still in slavery, but the only place in the 19th century where they allowed black folks to hold drums and play drums was in Congo Square in New Orleans. They got together and play the drums, but they took away out the talking drums, our mother tongue. And there's a problem because the way to win in this system is to practice group politics. If you're Irish American, if you're Korean American, you from Korea, I'm from Italy or whatever, and they practice group politics. You look at the Irish Americans, how they came over here. They were the potato eaters. They were the white niggas, right? But they understood the power of group organizing, so they end up taking over, the fire departments or police departments on the Northeast. Or you look at the Jews or anybody, they come and practice group politics. And they religion back their group investment. And with black people, we got all these churches in the poorest of communities. And the churches ain't doing anything for black folks. You got black folks getting killed on church property now. Sandra Bland, when she was arrested, that was on church property. That was on church property where she was arrested and violated like that. In Memphis, you had a brother in January who was killed behind a black church on Parkway, St. Andrew A.M.E. Church in South Memphis. They basically the police killed a brother on church ground. And then in July in Memphis of last year, a police officer kidnapped a young black man named Darius Stewart and brought him to a church ground where he killed him. So we got this issue.
You had the massacre in South Carolina.
Exactly. And he got the church burnings, right, of course. So you got all this stuff happening on black churches, so there's no respect. So even if you go to their churches in South Carolina, they burned their church down after demarcation, and they'll try to do the insurrection. They didn't meet underground for years. So there's all this fear going on. And you look at the black church has a strong tradition of producing some of our greatest freedom fighters. Not just Dr. King, not just Adam Clayton Powell Jr., but also Harry Tubman, also Nat Turner. They were both ministers. Also Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, also Vernon Jones. These were some great people that they produced out of our church. John Coltrane, both of his grandfathers were AME ministers. And they got a church in San Francisco dedicated to John Coltrane and his music. So the black church is an awesome presence and force, but for the last decades or so, they've been kind of quiet since the movement, which is unfortunate. Because people
that's a good point, because even we looking at this situation in Flint, where's the church?
Exactly.
Seriously. We know that several of those preachers took those hush filters, but, where's the church even in a crisis this large? So the black church has gone silent, like you say, for quite a while.
Well, also the black church, there had a lot of adversity. Dr. King, a lot of his enemies came out of the black church. Because everybody had to write the letter for the Birmingham jail. He was addressing the clergy. And not just white clergy, but also black clergy. When he was leading the Montgomery bus boycott, they tried to get Daddy King to bring him back to Atlanta. The black ministers did. He said, bring your boy back to Ebenezer. And then, like, that's why he started the SCLC, because of, like, the infight among black ministers with Dr. King. Dr. King called for a meeting back in 1967 in Virginia for his corporate campaign. He called over 100 ministers to meet with him. Guess how many showed up?
How many?
No, yeah, 0. Nobody showed up. Dr. King was depressed a lot. He was very depressed a lot. He used to take himself into hospitals. He would stay up for days, but he was so depressed about stuff.
Well, wasn't he like 39 with the heart of like a 60-something-year-old man?
Yeah, there was a coroner said, yeah. There was an autopsy show. His heart, so he wouldn't have lived in long probably anyway. So he was you got to think about, he was under constant harassment for 13 years. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder, but he's under attack for the last 13 years of his life. And then, like, towards the last 4 years of his life, the American media, they turned against him. They started portraying him as an agitator, as unpatriotic. Dr. King was like one of the least liked people in America by the time he died. One of the least liked Americans. Like, they did polls on him and stuff. You read the Washington Post and New York Times in that period, right before Dr. King died. They said horrible things about Dr. King in the media. They act like he was Malcolm X or something.
Yeah, they did the same thing as Mandela. I mean, they vilify these people when they're alive, and then later on they Disneyfy them. Like they they whitewash them and then make them seem like they were like lovable characters. But they hated them at the time.
Yeah, but they do that to us though. That's why when black people talk about Dr. King was this or that, they don't know the real Dr. King because because do we ever talk to folks who actually work with Dr. King? Do we ever read what he actually said? He wrote books. Dr. King wrote books. I talked to A. Peter Bailey. He was one of Malcolm X's lieutenants towards the end. He was the co-founder of Malcolm X's Organization for Afro-American Unity, and also he was the newspaper editor of that organization. I talked to him the other day. He's a friend of mine. And he's a professor. And he would start reading some words, right? And people thought that what he was reading came from Malcolm X. It came from Dr. King. And it's in Dr. King's last book, Community or Chaos. Where do we go from here? Read Where Do We Go From Here, Community or Chaos. Dr. King sounds like Malcolm X. So were they really that far apart? Because Malcolm X came down to Selma. Go ahead.
So are you saying at the end he was realizing that, trying to do it the peaceful route may not work? Even that it was going to take a little bit more than, turning the other cheek constantly and marching? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he was realizing that. So you got to look at who he was hanging around. He loved Stokely Carmichael. Dr. King loved Kwame Ture. He thought the world was Kwame Ture. He thought, the slick people used to call Dr. King the Lord. They called him the Lord. He thought he was the chosen one. But Dr. King, he got this Macy, he had a Messiah complex, Dr. King did, to a certain degree. So he used to joke around with Dr. King and say, the Lord has come, the Lord has spoken. But he respected those guys. Dr. King respected the opinions of Stokely Carmichael and H. Rap Brown and people like that, the more radical people. The reason why I know this because it's been written about, and also I talk to people from that circle who knew these people. And Dr. King would call Stokely sometimes and say, Stokely, why don't you come by the church and hear me preach today? And Stokely said, I don't know, Dr. King. He said, well, Stokely, it's going to be a great speech. I want you to hear it. I want to get your input on it. And Stokely would come and he'd listen to Dr. King and he'd be inspired. And another thing about Stokely Carmichael, people don't know, of Kwame Ture, is that his mentor, another mentor of his was Elijah Muhammad. Even though he wasn't a Muslim, he used to meet with Elijah Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad thought the world of Stokely Carmichael. He actually would force Stokely Carmichael to help the Fruit of Islam, like he doing with Beyonce, with Farrakhan I do for Beyonce. Elijah Muhammad would do that for Stokely without his permission. He said, brother, we're going to protect you. I don't care what you say. We're going to make sure we have the brothers look out for you wherever you go. The brothers going to be looking out for you. So he had that type of respect with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But he never was a black Muslim. And he sometimes would criticize.
Stokely Carmichael, in order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. So he understood, right. And maybe some of that was rubbing off on Dr. King.
Yeah, so you got to think about it. Because Dr. King, I told you that the media kept on demonizing Dr. King. He said, well, y'all don't even give me a chance to speak. I'm talking about the peaceful solution, and y'all focus on the violence. He said what he was saying about the media. I said, y'all criticizing these. Y'all won't even let me have a platform to show an alternative. But Dr. King was not necessarily against the other stuff, but they killed him before he could get started. Because you know why? It was because he had the Poor People campaign coming to D.C. And D.C. was already under duress from Vietnam. We were sending more troops away to Vietnam. We had the Cold War situation going on. And if Dr. King brought those type of people to D.C., see, Dr. King was bringing not only black people, he was bringing Native Americans, Appalachian white people. All the dispossessed were coming to D.C. And they were going to shut D.C. down. It was not going to be like 63, where they had a march and a rally and a speech and a program. They were coming to D.C. to shut it down, to stop business as usual. This is my thing about Farrakhan. He didn't have the same mentality or mindset of Dr. King in 68. Because Dr. King was coming down to D.C. to shut it down. And the government said, we can't have him come to D.C. Because if he comes to D.C., he's going to start a revolution. Not because Dr. King was going to start it, but because the people that were coming with Dr. King was going to start the revolution. See, revolutions are never started by revolutionaries.
No.
They started by people just wanting bread and land.
I think that's the one as you were talking that's not on our list, but I want to add them, and that would be Johnny Cochran. You know, Johnny Cochran, for whatever reason, Johnny Cochran was planning to sue the government for reparations for black people.
Right, that's why they killed him. Yeah, they killed him.
Hello, y'all.
They always give folks cancer. The government, see, those things people don't understand. Like Dick Gregory, he said, I had the cancer that the government gave me. That was 15 years ago. Farrakhan had the cancer that the government gave you. I thought, at the time where 2005, 2007, everybody thought that Farrakhan was going to die. And now he's still with us. And Dick Gregory been alive for 15 years. He had that cancer 15 years ago. I remember they did a tribute for Dick Gregory at the Kennedy Center back in 2000. And he had Bill Cosby be his MC. He had Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks and other people speaking for Dick Gregory. And no people dead. You know, Dick Gregory's still here. So Sophie Carmichael, towards the end, look at some of his last speeches, even on C-SPAN. He said the government gave him the cancer that he got to kill him. Because Sophie Carmichael didn't even make it to 60. He died in his 50s. Same thing with Franz Fanon, Richard of the Earth. He died in Bethesda, Maryland at the Naval Hospital, allegedly from leukemia. But they killed him. It's like with Richard Wright. Richard Wright, he died in Paris under mysterious circumstances. And his daughter claims to this day that he was assassinated by the CIA. Because Richard Wright was an interesting character. People should look at what stuff he was doing over in Europe. He actually did some work with an organization that was actually a front for the CIA. So this is what these people do. They dirty.
It helps those that may not be able to follow, because, a lot of people consider these kind of shows conspiracy theories, and they don't follow. So when you say that they gave them cancer, can you kind of elaborate on how that could possibly be so that people who don't believe can maybe follow just a little closer and say, well, maybe that is possible. Give them a scenario in which something like that is possible.
Well, I'll tell you this, people should look at the transcripts or even the video of the church committee hearings from the 1970s. The church committee hearings, like we talked about earlier about Senator Frank Church from Idaho. He had those church committee hearings to expose COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, how the U.S. government was abusing their power, spying on Americans, and even probably participating in the assassination of Americans. Now, they had a thing called a heart attack gun. You can look up the heart attack gun. They had a thing where it could send out waves or whatever. It could cause heart attacks. This is true. This is not science fiction. This is documented. You just Google heart attack gun. They were doing this stuff back at least in the 40s or 50s. They had a assassin that was going around killing Polish political leaders. He ended up flipping and became a double agent, whatever you want to call it. But he testified how he used this type of heart attack gun to kill these political revolutionaries in Poland, I believe, back in the 40s and 50s. So this is all documented stuff. It's like with LSD. LSD was created by the government. And they put LSD in the water supply of this country in France that made people go crazy. So think about Flint, Michigan. What in the hell is in that water? They got stuff that can make a person to a serial killer. They got stuff that can turn people gay. I mean, it's been documented.
Yep.
They got stuff they could sterilize. Look, Fannie Lou Hamer, one of the great civil rights leaders, she was sterilized by her doctor without her consent. You had 21 states in America back in the 20th century. They'll go around sterilizing women without their consent. Now, we recently had the women prisoners out of California being sterilized without their consent. They got corn they give to people in South America that sterilize them. You got the birth control Depo veterans that sterilize women in developing countries. So they got food products, not food.
Let's bring it home a little closer. Didn't Farrakhan just recently release a video or audio a video in which he's talking about how he had I'm assuming was a black doctor for a long time, and then he went to his doctor up in Virginia somewhere near the CIA headquarters, and his regular doctor had another doctor with him, and he believes at that time that they gave him something that caused him to have cancer, and remember he said that it caused him severe pain, and when he went to get examined, he was having like lead coming from, I'm not sure what's going on. He was having like lead coming from his penis or something like that. Wasn't that the case?
I heard. I didn't look at the whole video, but it's quite possible. You got to understand that American medical establishment was founded on dissecting black people like frogs. Treating us like lab rats or guinea pigs. Think about the father of gynecology. I think Dr. J. Marion Sales from South Carolina. He would actually use all types of utensils and put it in black women's vaginas while anesthesia. He would just rip their vaginas apart and just mutilate their vaginas. And he's the father of gynecology. He did that by destroying black women's wombs and vaginas. Without anesthesia. You talking about Nazi Germany? You talking about Mengele?
We can't forget
America is Mengele. Oh, no, you can't forget Margaret Sanger with Planned Parenthood, the Klanswoman. And this was the thing, she gave awards to Dr. King and Dr. W. Du Bois. They took it. You know, this all confused, like the NAACP, like I said, with Booker T. Washington. I mean, there's a theory now that Booker T. Washington was murdered. And then, you know, I had a sister on my show from Mobile, Alabama. She's a nurse. And she was finding evidence to claim that the NAACP was involved in the killing of Booker T. Washington. You know, like the Bill O'Reilly
Well,
Booker.
they had somebody spying on Booker T. Washington, too.
Right, of course.
Robert Moulton, he was spying on Booker T. Washington, and he also was spying on Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, he also replaced Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee.
Yeah, he worked there, but then he was also spying, and then
that's why he replaced him as president. He replaced Booker T. Washington.
Yeah, he worked there under Booker T. Washington too. That's how he got in there.
Yeah, he was Army intelligence. Yeah, he was Army intelligence, but a lot of people don't know that.
He later spied on Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, I believe that. A lot of people spied on Marcus Garvey.
Question, Run, and this person says, okay, so was he referring that all the others that speak out are dead, but Dick Gregory is alive? She says, I am confused.
No, I didn't even say. I didn't make no sense. I was just giving you an example that Dick Gregory used to say that the government gave him a cancer, a form of cancer they give certain people, and that Dick Gregory is still alive 15 years later. And I also said that Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, he said towards the end that the government gave him cancer. There are a lot of folks make these claims. Like even Adam Clayton Powell Jr., how he died was kind of interesting, you know. And these people were very outspoken. And they were very involved in the political scene. They were very much against the establishment. And this is quite a possibility. Like, you think about, like I said, Mickey Leland. People know about
Bob Marley also suddenly got...
Bob Marley, right. Bob Marley, too. Man, they attacked him in his home, right before a concert. They tried to kill him in his home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I also go Jimi Hendrix. You know, if you don't understand that Jimi Hendrix gave a lot of money to the Black Panther Party. Jimi Hendrix get a lot of money to Black Panther Party. Well, I was just going with
Jimi Hendrix gave to Dr. King and the SCL, what is it, Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Yeah,
he also gave to...
Yeah, he probably did, but I'm saying, but people don't understand.
And you know what?
Go ahead, sorry. Now I was saying people look at Jimi Hendrix being
what I got on Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix, it seems like, you know, he was kind of, you know, protesting in his own right. They said he agreed with the civil rights movement happening in the 60s, and it said basically that he would go to venues and go sit in the all-white section. in protest and would get arrested a lot, and they said that he was famous, but he donated money to the NAACP and Reverend Martin Luther King and his Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So go figure. So he was famous, but he was putting himself on the line a lot because he didn't agree with what was going on in the 60s.
Of course he did.
That's Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, I was Jimi Hendrix. He was a member of the 101st Airborne of the Screaming Eagles out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He used to jump out of airplanes for the government. And then he got discharged because he was, imagine Jimi Hendrix is a soldier, but he got discharged and moved to Nashville, and the rest is history. Well, yeah, that's something to be noted because we let them tell the narrative on our heroes. So some people believe that Jimi Hendrix was a junkie. He wasn't a junkie. He liked to experiment with stuff. That's why he called his band The Experience. He wanted to experiment with things, experience life. But when I talked to a woman whose husband was real close to Jimi Hendrix, one of his best friends, named Larry Lee. He's passed. He's deceased now. But he said towards the end, he was with Jimmy. He used to see these two white women around Jimmy all the time, like gypsies or whatever. They were kind of out of place. And he left England right before Jimmy died. But also, there are claims that say that Jimi Hendrix was not. He was still alive. He was conscious in the ambulance. By the time he got to the hospital, he was dead. So he didn't choke off his vomit, as they say. And his manager was a guy they said was in British intelligence, MI6. And his manager passed away back in 1973. You can look at all this stuff up online.
Everything is not as it's. And we're so good, as black folks, y'all, that is. We're so good at saying what we read without doing any further research. We get one article in the newspaper and believe what they consider the official story, when in a lot of cases the story is much deeper. Yeah. These black leaders and how they left there.
Like when Booker T. Washington, get back to him.
You that, Brother Ron?
Yeah, definitely. Because you can't trust the papers. All this is propaganda. That's why you got to create our own propaganda. Because what's weird about us as black people is we try to prove that we ain't lying to liars. We try to prove we're not liars to the liar. Look at the gods of Egypt crap. We try to prove we're not lying. We tell the truth to the damn liar. That's how messed up we are as a people. Like with Booker T. Washington, if he was alive, the Tuskegee experiment would never went down. That's why they had to kill him. And white folks will wait for years and decades and even generations to carry out their devious plans. See, black folks, we want it now, but we've been waiting for 500 years. What's the rush, right? But white folks will take generations upon generations to get what they want, to get their revenge. And we so quick to forgive in just half a second. But white folks will not forgive. They'll use that hate to build empires, to build dynasties, to get rid of revenge. Like with H. Rap Brown, they finally got him. Like with O.J., we finally got O.J. See, we can't have no victories. They all pirate victories with black people when it comes to the white supremacist system. So with Booker T. Washington, you got to think about.
What I think.
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback off what you said, I think maybe we can go on with that forgiveness thing because a lot of us Christians and we want to get to heaven. But why don't we use that? Just like he said, when something bad happens, the other people take that and use it as a momentum to do some stuff. What we need to do is take that same momentum when they're doing us bad and use it, or that same, what do you want to call it? We need to take that negativity and use it to our advantage. So when we see one of us getting killed for no reason, we should use that as a reason to unite, is what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying? So every time we see a senseless case of, of someone being a victim of police brutality, and we can clearly see on the video, it is what it is, regardless of what the news media tells us happened. When we see the video for ourselves, we can't let people continue to tell us we didn't see what we thought we saw. And we need to take that and use that as a reason to unite. Don't y'all agree with that, or is it me?
I agree with that, but what we do is as soon as they say, oh, well, he did put his hand over there, or, he looked that way and that's why he had to be shot. As soon as they bring up any type of petty rationale as to why somebody needed to get shot 8 times in the back or choked to death on the sidewalk, or just driven up on and shot on sight, we buy that because we don't have the confidence to just say what we just saw with our own 2 eyes on the video. we'll sit there and go along with that false narrative that they give us. So what we need to do is be a friend of the truth, because we are not liars, but we will believe lies in order so that we don't seem threatening at all. Because even though we aren't doing anything to be a threat, we're seen as a threat. So just naturally, we want to reduce the appearance that we are threatening. That's why when the guy goes into the church and shoots 9 people, you get the family members on TV the next day talking about they forgive.
Right.
But there's no justice. So, but no, there has to be justice, and then we can forgive.
Nobody being arrested, without nobody being charged with anything.
Yeah,
nobody
no
being
whatsoever. None whatsoever, but we're forgiving. You can't forgive. The order is justice, then forgiveness. But we just giving up the forgiveness and not getting anything back in return. Because there's that officer that shot Walter Scott in the back and then planted a gun on him is out on bail right now. They said the jail was overcrowded. Well, if the jail is overcrowded and you have to give a killer who murdered somebody by shooting them 8 times and then planting a gun on them and falsifying government documents, if that person gets out, then that whole jail should be empty right now. If that's the kind of guy that you got to let out because of overcrowding, who else is in there that did something worse?
Right. What about the nonviolent drug offenders? Or you know what I'm saying? Like, what about the nonviolent people that's in jail and overcrowded?
You know what I'm saying? If it's that overcrowded, what kind of killers do they have in there? If he gets out, what kind of killers do they have in there? Nobody should be in jail, because that is about as worse a crime as you can commit. But they let him out, and I highly doubt he'll ever go back in jail if they let him out.
Well, but see, that tells me, we aren't united. They know that we're not united, and, the few of us that will speak out, it doesn't pose a real threat, so they can do that. But if they knew that we were standing on the outside of the jail when he got ready to get out with picket signs saying, y'all better put him back in, they wouldn't have never let him out in the first place. So, it just... We have a low attention span, in my opinion, and so after 15 minutes, we're done and we're on something else. I mean, we just don't, we're not going to watch very long. And so if we don't get a solution to whatever our problem is in 15 minutes, we're done.
I mean, because we don't control our own flow of information, our own media and sources of information. So because they're done with it, we don't have, it's not on our radar screen or on most people's radar screen because they're not, following it independently. So that's why they forget about it. I'm sure most people don't know that man that killed Walter Scott is out on bail.
Yeah, I know.
That's a flimsy reason of overcrowding.
Yeah.
We got to do better.
Well, the thing about it is...
You know what, y'all? Go ahead, Ron.
No, I was saying that the problem is that we not understanding that these things are going to continue to happen because we don't respect ourselves enough to stop respecting the system that does this to us. We still respect this system. Their authority is not relevant right now. It should not be respected. It shouldn't have any type of respect when it comes to mistreating people like us. We should have enough self-respect to stop even paying taxes for our own genocide. We basically subsidize our own genocide. Not just with police, but also with education, with the food, with the healthcare system. We subsidize our own genocide. And so what we got to start doing is one person can make a difference. That's why they kill them. That's why they kill all these black messiahs. That's why they kill Malcolm. That's why they kill Dr. King. That's why they kill Frank Hampton. That's why they poison Stokely. Because one person can make a difference. And that's what we got to understand. It's not about all black people coming together. We don't know our mother tongue. If we knew our mother tongue, we could practice group politics like the Irish and the Italians and the Japanese. We don't know our mother tongue. It was taken from us. But we could get it back if we want it. So that's why there's still hope. But also we got to stop letting our kids be used as collateral damage and blood sacrifices for this system. We got to start homeschooling or schooling our kids. We got to stop them from not knowing their history. Because this goes on for generations and generations. I talk to people in their 80s that don't know some of the stuff we're talking about tonight. And they have grandkids and great-grandkids. So it's not just the ones with their parents. You know what I'm saying? That stupid stuff. I don't care if your underwear is sagging. That's a protest against a system that does not show you to be or treat you like a human being like you should be treated. So we so focused on respectability politics, but that stuff you still get killed over respectability politics. Even if you practice them, if you wear a suit. Malcolm was killed in the suit, right? Dr. King was killed in the suit. Then they have their pants sagging, their shoes are shining. Okay.
Let me ask you, Brother Ron, one person that comes to mind, and I don't know if you would put them on this list, but I do, Brother Ron Brown. Remember Brother Ron Brown?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I remember that when it happened.
You want to elaborate on him a little bit?
Well, he was a Secretary of Commerce, I believe, and he was also the bag man for Bill Clinton with China. And he was going to expose Bill Clinton if his son had to go to jail. He was trying to protect his son. He knew he was going to jail, quite possibly so. But he wanted to make a deal with Clinton that his son would not go to jail. So, my understanding, he allegedly approached Bill Clinton in the White House, and Bill Clinton was dismissive of him. And it's always that movie thing. Why you going to tell somebody what you going to do to him? If you don't do this for me, Bill, I'm going to blow the whistle. Okay, Ron, whatever, Ron. So, his wife was building that plane. That's what been Hillary's plane, but it got switched out, from my understanding, at the last minute. So that was a professional hit on Ron Brown. Because Dick Gregory, like he said, he had the autopsy on him.
And the Clintons killed other of their associates.
Right, like Vincent Foster, the lawyer in the park, right? Like go to Clinton Chronicles. You gotta understand, Bill Clinton. Now they could do Baby and Papa Doc of Haiti, from my understanding. The Clintons are. They run Haiti now. There's some interesting articles out there because they found gold in Haiti. Now they're trying to get the gold mined. So the Clintons are like King Leopold right now. Somebody did an interesting article. They compared Bill Clinton to King Leopold, him and Hillary. Like, he controlled the Congo, and they controlled Haiti. So, and the thing about Bill Clinton, we got to understand about Bill Clinton, is where he come from. They say there's a place called Hope, but Hope is also Hot Springs. And Hot Springs, Arkansas, back in the day, was a place for gangsters. Like, only Madden, who ran the Cotton Club. When he retired, he went down to Hot Springs. He was the unofficial mayor of Hot Springs. He ran Hot Springs. And so you had people like Al Capone. They caught Lucky Luciano when he was on the run from the law in Hot Springs, Arkansas. So you had all the gangsters just come to Hot Springs, Arkansas back in the 30s and 40s and 50s and whatnot to help a good time. So this is how we get Bill Clinton. Because Arkansas is such a gangster state. It's really, we talking about gangster towns. Arkansas is a gangster state. Check the history. Look at the Elaine, Arkansas riot. They killed over 1,000 black folks and threw their bodies in the Mississippi River because they was meeting to unionize the black sharecroppers. They wanted a union. They met at a church back in September 1919. This is during the red summer while these black folks and all these race riots was happening throughout the country, places like Chicago and stuff like that. They was meeting to unionize black farmers at a church, and the white folks attacked the church, and the black folks fought back. And then it caused a race war down in Lane, Arkansas. Matter of fact, you had these brothers called the Johnson brothers. They was well-off, upper-class black men. They were very well known throughout the country. They were killed in the race massacre in Lane, Arkansas. So this stuff we need to know about because next year will be the 100th anniversary of the East St. Louis riots. This was during World War I, where the white folks attacked the black folks in East St. Louis, where they were throwing babies back into fires, burning houses. They would throw the black children back into the burning home. They was raping women and stuff. They were white people doing this to black folks. This is the 100th anniversary coming up next year. East St. Louis riot. So, white folks are very sick.
We got to learn our history. We got to do. We got to do it because you know what the thing is. We getting ready to repeat it. I mean, because you know what? I've never seen the word slavery used so many times as I have this last 45 to 60 days. And I'm thinking to myself, if somebody sends out subliminal messages, about what's really about to come.
Right.
And so if we don't start to fight back, y'all, that really may be where we're getting ready to go to if we're dealing with someone like Donald Trump. I think the first time I heard it from Sarah Palin saying something about maybe we need to start implementing slavery in a soft way. I forgot how she put it. I'm paraphrasing, but kind of ease back into slavery. And then I've seen it in several other articles. But what I'll tell y'all that I know from doing this show is there's something called predictive programming where they will drop it in different places to kind of ease you into a kind of acceptance of what they're about to do.
Right.
And if you pay attention, just Google slavery and see how many times it comes up in this last 60 to 90 days, and see, doesn't that kind of make you uneasy? And that may be a situation in which they're trying to let us know where we're going back to. Yeah, we're going back to the phone lines. What a great segue. We're going to 364-381. Good evening. You're on Center Stage. Good evening.
How you doing, Carrie?
Everyone. Hi, Pianki. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Hear you guys making fun of my favorite presidential hopeful, Donald Trump.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But, you know, you're making mention, too, about black people coming together. All blacks in the United States do not have the same ideas. And you go back during the time of King, you had blacks like E.D. Nixon who did not want the Montgomery bus boycott to go the way it went. They wanted to buy out the white bus company, but King and them did not want to do that. When King came to St. Louis, where I'm at, black preachers told him to get the hell out of the city. They didn't want to have anything to do with that. And also, the same thing as he went up north. See, blacks up north was voting all the time. It was the blacks in the South that wasn't voting. They had the right to vote, but the powers to be in those states in the South, they implemented things that made it very difficult for blacks to vote. Now, another thing I want to make mention of is Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's son-in-law, who's married to Chelsea, he's a Jew. Hillary Clinton's grandchildren would be Jews. Chelsea is pregnant now, will give birth sometime this summer. But his daddy was a congressperson in Iowa who was convicted of Bernie Madoff type fraud. And he's serving time in prison for swindling people. Now, Hillary Clinton's son-in-law works for Wall Street. So we wonder what's going on there. We hear people saying, well, Bernie Madoff is going to go after Wall Street, which he's not. Not Madoff, I'm sorry, Bernie Sanders.
Right.
But do we believe that Hillary Clinton is going to go after Wall Street, being that her daughter is married to a financial investor there on Wall Street? I don't think so. Another thing, his name is Mark. Hillary Clinton's daughter, Chelsea, her husband, Mark, and both Obama's children went to a private school in D.C. called Sidwell Friends. Also, some black poor children went to Sidwell Friends. That is, until Obama administration and Arne Duncan done away with the D.C. voucher program, where poor couldn't go there anymore. How hypocritical is that? Another thing, during the time when Hillary was running for president against Obama back in 2007, she made mention of that 3 o'clock in the morning call.
Right.
And would Obama be able to handle it? Well, with this last email that came out from Marie Slaughter, where she congratulates Hillary for what she done in order to change the mind of the President of the United States, who was Obama. Hillary was Secretary of State, in their attack on Libya. Initially, Obama didn't want to have anything to do with it because his Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, said it would be a bad thing to do. But Hillary convinced him that we need to take Gaddafi out. Then when you took out Gaddafi, that led to implementation that went on from Benghazi over to now Syria, and also down into northern Nigeria with Boko Haram. Because the weapons catch that was gathered from disrupting of the Libyan government, those weapons ended up going into the hands of the Syrian rebels, sometimes called moderates, sometimes called freedom fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And they also went through Mali, worked their way into Nigeria, into the hands of Boko Haram. So it's a bunch of hypocrisy that's going on. And black folks don't know what the hell. I mean, they just listen to these names. You mentioned about the incident down there in South Carolina where the policeman shot the man in the back. Mm-hmm. Well, black folks forgave that guy before his name was even cool on the news.
We got to stop there. We got to stop there. I think, you know what, I think, you know, I think we get confused with forgiveness, you know, that we have to do it immediate. The Bible says forgive, but he didn't say you had to do it in 15 minutes. And so I think black people, before we process what really happened, somebody sticks a microphone in front of our face and say, do you forgive them for killing your mother? Do you forgive them for killing your brother? And I don't know if we feel obligated to say yes, but the answer always seems to be yes. But I'm going to say to anybody, I don't think it has to be in 15 minutes. I really don't. I think we need to figure out how to make sure that justice is served before we go into the forgiveness process. I think it should be phases. And I think forgiveness should not be the first phase. Maybe forgiveness should be after you've made sure that the person is, you know, charged, convicted, you know, and in prison. And then you can say, now, Lord, I thank you for doing that, and I forgive them. Something like that.
All I can tell you is good luck. Because these things run a whole lot deeper. You know, you had a black student from Morehouse being interviewed about why he's going to vote for Hillary Clinton. He said because she spent her whole life worked for civil rights. Well, that's a damn lie. Because she worked for Goldwater during his campaign. Goldwater was a staunch transgressionist against the Civil Rights Act.
Y'all need to tune in next week. Well, you know what? We're going to go over that next week. In fact, I think next week we're going to be covering basically, what was the title, Hillary? We're going to be dealing with how the black collective vote could change the 2016 presidential election. We're going to cover all that next Friday night right here at Center Stage. We're going to be talking about that, Bianchi, because we understand now that if black folks don't come together and change the game in 2016, you know, we're never going to get ahead. So we are going to be covering that very thing next week right here at Center Stage from 8 to 10 p.m. Central. Thank you for calling in tonight. Bianchi, we got to get ready to get out of here. Run, listen, tie it in a bow for us tonight. Why do they, you know, why is it, you know, throughout history they have prevented the rise of a black Messiah?
And why did they crucify Jesus?
That's a good point.
But the thing about it is, it's good that you talk about all this stuff. Brother Malcolm was dangerous because he understood the international implications of stuff. He was operating during the time of the Cold War. So what he was talking about, Brother Bianchi, that's why Malcolm was dangerous, because he was communicating with heads of states and whatnot. For example, let's get to, we never talked about Robert F. Williams. Robert F. Williams is unique. He's from Monroe, North Carolina. He was the president of the NAACP down there. But he had to leave the country. He was a fugitive on the run with him and his wife and sons, right? And he went to Cuba. And he started a thing called Radio Free Dixie. And he lived to be in his 70s. He died from leukemia, I think, back in 96. And he said, the reason why you don't know about me is because basically he survived the 60s. And this is the thing that we got to understand about how powerful black people are. When he left Cuba, he went to China. He was a guest of honor of Chairman Mao. America wanted to get inside of China. The reason why Richard Nixon became the first president in American history to visit China was because that black man from Monroe, North Carolina, he wanted to come back home. So he made a deal with the government. He said, look, I can tell y'all some inside information. I can connect you with the right people if y'all are willing to, you know, let me come back home and drop the charges. So they dropped the charges against him because they claimed that he kidnapped a white family during a riot down in North Carolina, which was not true. And so they let him come back to Detroit. But that's a story that needs to be told, because he wrote a book called Negroes with Guns. That inspired Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party to form. The Negroes with Guns book he wrote back in the day. And also, he had his disagreements with brother Dr. King, and Malcolm X respected him highly, Robert F. Williams. But that's a person that we need to know more about. And he played a major part in American political history as it relates to foreign policy. He's the reason why America has a relationship with China.
I hear you. Well, y'all, it's been an interesting 2 hours. Hillary, any closing comments?
Oh, I learned a lot, and thank you, Brother Ron, for giving us all that information. And I think that going forward, we need to learn our history, but we don't need a messiah. Like, we all just need to get on board and get on code, because whenever we have a leader, they just kill the leader anyway. Mm-hmm. So everybody has to be their own leader.
I agree. Brother Warren, tell them how to find you on the Internet, how to find your show, how to reach out to you if they'd like you to be guests on their shows, that type of thing.
I think email me at weallbe@gmail.com. That's weallbe, WEALLBE @gmail.com. Or they could call me at 901-299-4355. That's 901-299-4355. They got a YouTube channels. Just look up We All Be TV, and you can find it on YouTube. Our channels.
Wow. Y'all, listen, it's been an interesting 2 hours. Yes, it has. And y'all need to come back next week. Again, as I talked about earlier, we're going to be talking about the subject, how the black elected vote can change the 2016 presidential campaign, or 2016 presidential election, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Listen, y'all, I hope y'all learned something, because I sure do. I always learn something when Brother Roy stops at center stage and we save the best for last. We close out Black History Month strong. Like I said, we don't take all month to celebrate Black History, the month of September, that is. We do it all year long. We talk about Black history and Black issues here at Center Stage all the time. Listen, if you have an idea for a show, drop us a line at centerstageradio@yahoo.com. That's centerstageradio@yahoo.com. And if it's in line with something we do, we will typically try to put it in our rotation if at all possible. And one of the things that Ron mentioned, and I wanted to say before we close out tonight, you know, we talked a lot about black leaders, Ron, and them getting cancer. If you go back and check your history, you will find out that there's never been a sitting you've never had a sitting president to die of cancer. As a matter of fact, you've never had a U.S. president ever to die of cancer. You know why? Because there's a cure for cancer. And if you go back and you check recently, wasn't it Jimmy Carter that had a serious battle with cancer, and now the cancer is completely gone, Ron? Isn't that true?
Yeah. And often was supposedly brain cancer. Yeah.
Hello, yo. Wake up. Just putting that out there. So join us right here at Center Stage next Friday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Central, 9 to 11 Eastern, as we talk about how the black vote should be brought together, and we need to write in a candidate for 2016 and change the game. That's what we need to do, y'all. And join us here at Center Stage next Friday night as we talk about it. It's going down right here at Center Stage. Okay, we got to get out of here. Thank you so much for listening tonight. And again, thank you, Brother Ron, for being with us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.